A very big welcome to everyone that you'll be able to join us today and for this very exciting webinar. So my name is Clayton and I'll be hosting, and hopefully I can do the topic on hand today a little bit of justice. So feel free to pop any questions you have directly in the chat, and time permitting, we will address those even on the fly, or we'll just loop back at them afterwards. So today, what is the problem or challenge that we're actually putting on the table? And well, to keep it really simple, most organizations have a strategy, but few have a clear line of sight between that strategy and what their teams are actually working on. And it's that gap basically, which is the conversation that we're all talking about today. And I am super stoked and privileged to have two amazing guests on the panel with us today to help us really lean into that problem statement. So let's start maybe with yourself, Brandon. So kick us off. Tell us who you are and what do you do at Asana?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Brandon. I'm a solutions engineer here at Asana. I've been with the team now for almost 10 years, actually. And what I do at Asana is I work directly with my clients. I like to educate them a bit on what Asana is, what its capabilities are, and really just tying it together of how they can leverage Asana to benefit their day-to-day, whether that be through project management, task management, goals management, etc. It's just the concept of tying it all together. But nice to meet everyone here.
Awesome. Lachlan. Great stuff. And Lachlan, tell us who you are and what your world looks like at Elegance Group.
Yeah, thanks, Clayton, and good to see you again, Brandon. So I look after a team of value engineers at Woolworths, and so I guess my role as head of value engineering is to, with all of the sort of capital that we spend, how do we keep the team and customer offer the same whilst essentially spending less money. So it's wide and varied, and that's exactly how I like it. But obviously there's lots of different sized and different length projects right throughout that too, which can make it tricky sometimes. But yeah, I've been with Woolies for just over 21 years now. So started in stores, and then the last sort of actually I just realized it's 12 years in Sydney now. So 12 years in the support office.
Nice.
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, it's amazing, man. It's amazing. So yeah, talking about complex, let's set the scene. So Lachlan, take us, in that world that you're operating at Woolworths Group. Say you're running a complex program across multiple work streams in extremely high pressure environments. What does that challenge of keeping leadership aligned to what's actually happening on the ground look like from where you sit?
Yeah, so it's been a few years now. They've been running like a quarterly delivery cycle, and so we'll obviously set the strategy around about starting in March, getting through to about May, where we kind of release it to the team in order for them to start big room planning. And actually it's this week actually for the next quarter. So this is the busy week for the team, and we'll set the objectives up front, and then we'll discuss what key results we need to deliver each quarter to deliver those objectives. And so I think right around the time we brought the quarterly delivery cycle in, we got pretty serious with Asana and tracking all of our key results through the goals functionality in there. And that's, I've got a team that we work with very closely in Shanghai from an international sourcing perspective. I've got my team on the ground, and as you can imagine, many stakeholders in Woolies that we need to keep abreast of what we're doing and all of the status updates that go with that throughout the quarter. So that's a little bit into it.
Nice. Well, hey, mate, again, thanks for being here. I know what QBR weeks can look like, and they're pretty busy. So, yeah, I imagine you've got a lot on your plate right now. Brandon, you work with organizations across the whole of ANZ, right, every single day. So what Lachlan is describing, is that something you actually see commonly, or does Woolworths, in terms of like complexity and the size of Woolworths, is that more on the high end of the spectrum?
Yeah, definitely. I think Woolworths here is definitely on kind of the higher end in that perspective, where there's going to be a lot of complex moving parts that's happening, and we really need to keep track of how things are progressing. I think a lot of the clients that I work with directly is going to be on that spectrum from that low to high aspect, right? Where some of them, to be honest, don't even know anything, don't know much around goals tracking. So then they're just trying to kind of work with what they have. And that's when we kind of come in to go, oh, actually, let's rethink this a bit. let's challenge what goals that you would have set out for yourselves, and how can we make them a little bit more ambitious? How do we, what exactly does forward thinking look like within your organization? And how do we kind of move the needle to say, rather than just thinking of the concept of how do we float and continue, to how do we now thrive and build a sustainable business?
Yeah, nice. So yeah, I guess it really doesn't matter whether it's like massive, complex organization, small organization. It's already the same, right? It's that strategy, it's setting the goals, and it's really finding that middle ground, and making that connection between that work. Yeah.
I think also, Clayton, it's like it's in what's great is if you can show from an individual contributor perspective right up through to the managing director. And so it's sort of like if they see they can tick off a task, which then contributes to, ticking off part of that goal, then that's like immediate job satisfaction, right? And then the status updates will flow. And if the line leaders can then, give a bit of appreciation or whatever for those status updates, we are reading them. So it's much more meaningful that way, I think.
Totally. One of the organizations that I worked at, we actually landed up on the lowest level work items. We were able to link the strategy to that, all the way even enterprise strategies. So again, there from a meaning point of view, they could work on something and know, hey, this is actually the outcome that I'm affecting, like on an enterprise level, even though it might just be a little subtask that's in their bucket for the day, they could actually see that. Yeah. Great.
And Lachlan, I think you kind of brought up a great point there, right? Where I think with the clients that I work with who are still fairly new to the OKR game, they want to, they're a bit hesitant because they feel like it's a very tops down approach, meaning leadership sets it up, but they might not be too in tune with what's happening on the ground, and they don't want to be that micromanager to say, here's what you guys have to do, follow my lead. When in reality, the experts are going to be the individuals on the ground. You not only want to set the direction from the top, or you don't want to just set the goals from the top, but you want to then kind of see what that realistic, what does realistic achievement look like at the ground level? How are they going to build out their own independent goals to ladder up to what our company's objectives are? Because that's going to, one, create a bit of autonomy, two, less effort from leadership side in that sense, because you're hiring people to kind of think rather than just do. And three, it's going to, just really stimulate that type of creativiness that you would want out of a team.
Yeah.
I agree with most of that, except for the team creating their own goals. They can do it like in goals, but like we're ruthlessly prioritizing in my space. So it's like these are the goals. I'd much rather them have that kind of safe space where they can mark something off track or at risk, and then I know that I can go in there and help fix it or unblock it or whatever. But yeah, I try and keep it to, I'll write the goals, thanks, and then you guys can contribute towards it.
Well, for those
separately,
we'll write the goals, but you write the KRs. So kind of how are you going to help me achieve my goals?
That's right. Yeah. Keep the big rocks agree to the top line level.
Yes, exactly.
If anyone's got experience with that, what in the webinar, give us a comment there how you found that. So let's move on to the problem as a whole. So Lachlan, Asana's anatomy of work research shows that employees spend a significant portion of their time on what we love to call work about work. So all those status updates, chasing information, sitting in meetings to find out like what is actually going on here. Did that resonate with you, what you were seeing previously inside Woolworths?
Yeah, I think when I first moved into a previous role, we were running quite a large program off of some Google Sheets and a few hopes and a dream, and we're sort of like we're looking for a kind of workflow tool to sort of really help us follow that bouncing ball. And I think when you bring in anything new, like when brought in Asana to that specific kind of project or program, people are like, oh, this is just extra work, and it would like it takes a while for people to kind of realize their aha moments of, oh, actually, if I just do my work in this tool and I attach everything in here, then it's like this is just actually where the work gets done, and then the output is much easier, whether it's a smart status update or whether it's a a comment in there, and I think it's just getting smarter and smarter all the time. So I mean, if it feels like extra work, then you're kind of doing it wrong, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what people tend to forget as well is it's not about sometimes doing, like, if you think about the old ways that they would do it, the context switch you needed for some of these status reports and to chase work and do things like that, the cost of actually doing that as well is so significant around people just losing focus on what they should be doing, as opposed to, like you said, be doing the work, that you're doing the job in the work itself by actually just using it and by everything laddering up and you can see it all there. So yeah, it's a huge cost of the business as well. So Brandon, from what Lachlan said now, is that pattern landing with the organizations that you're talking to across the entire ANZ? So are they, so basically, where are they feeling that pain most acutely?
Yeah, so I guess in general, around the concept that work about work, I think a lot of the clients are experiencing that when they kind of come up to us. They come to us with a problem saying, we have X amount of spreadsheets we're working on, we have XYZ software, we just want a solution. And then I'll even admit, upon kind of, even if they land on Asana or another work management tool, one problem that they still face is that kind of implementation portion around the laggards of the tools, where they go, I don't feel my team is using the software properly. And it's going to happen regardless of what software you have, because it kind of, if you boil down what Lachlan just said, it sounds to me the main problem is it's these two statements. Why is this important? And why is this important to me? If you can't answer those two questions, you're going to have trouble adopting any type of software, any type of processes, because you're right, Clayton, people are going to want to default to their factory setting. They're going to want to default to what they're comfortable with. And then when they do that, they're then going to treat this new software as work about work. I'm just copying and pasting what I've done at X into software Y. And then they're just going to come up to you, now Lachlan, and go, why am I doing this? So again, it really just boils down to that concept of why is this important and why it's important to me. It's important because we want to unify our organization. We don't want you to have to work within this tech sprawl. We want you to be as optimized as possible. And why this is important to you is because the less software you're going to be in, the less work, less connectivity of like updates you're going to have to perform as well. So it's really just, if you can help answer those two questions, I think it's just going to make life a whole lot easier.
Yeah, love that. So, I mean, to either of you, that can relate to this. So research, if you look at research, it suggests that OKR setting is really hard, but the harder problem itself is actually also, kind of tracking the OKRs and that flow of work. Why do you think that gap actually exists, and why does it persist, even though we know that organizations are continuously trying to close that gap?
I think it's hard to write a good KR. You try and make it smart, that acronym, and then it's about following it through, and then try not to change your mind for however long you've decided that KR takes for, which is for us, it's like a quarter. Stuff always comes in, and then it's like, oh, well, I'm on this now, so what's the priority? And we don't ever seem to pause much, but we're just going to start doing it. So I think it's just like hard. But I think what I've found is like consistency is really key with that. So we've got a great sort of like PMO team, like program management office, who really keep us honest, me especially. And it's about the consistency of like, the mid-quarter check-ins, the end of quarter. We had a really great big room planning kickoff yesterday where, each of the managing directors or directors sort of took, here's the page of all of the stuff that we delivered in last quarter, and you're looking at, wow, and it's just, I honestly don't think it'd be possible without, planning as we do over a couple of days at the start of the quarter, and then assigning the work based on that. It really helps being clear. And I think if it's consistent, and we definitely weren't there a few years ago, and it was hard to get it to where it is now, but it's almost a well-oiled machine now. To get into that sort of rhythm, and people expect it and get lots of benefit from it, because essentially you're just getting into a room and going, hey, this is our key result and now let's go to task level.
nice.
And get people's assigning them and hours in there.
Awesome. Yeah, contrary to that research, I actually, although in my opinion, you need some writing OKRs, I wouldn't say is that tough. But what I do think as well is you need a little bit of training on it, right? When we started off, people were writing OKRs and, giving a good crack at it. But ultimately, when you look back at it, was just a bunch of milestones. So like looking and actually understanding what a good OKR looks like is really beneficial as well to everybody to understand that. Because it's, like setting that could be the easy part. But you get everyone in a room, you write the goals, you feel good about it, and then the quarter starts and work just takes over. And as you said, you want that consistency and that to be able to make the connection between what you said you were going to do and what you're actually looking to achieve. Otherwise, it all just essentially quietly disappears. And you don't even notice that. You just come to the end of the quarter and all of a sudden time's gone and you're like, where are we? So I love what you mentioned around that consistency and actually keeping you, your PMO team doing a good job. They're keeping you guys accountable.
Yeah, I think the whole system has to reinforce itself too, right? Like, so you get to the end of the financial year, like we are now as well, for like individual performance reviews, and it's, how we rate our team is 50% is on ways of working, like how you went about that work, and 50% is like the business strategy and your contribution as well. So it's kind of like super like reinforcing that whole sort of yearly cycle.
Nice, mate. Nice. Amazing.
I think that's an important point as well, where, sorry for interrupting that part, but it's really important to just call out as well. It's not just about the OKRs themselves, but what is the culture around OKRs within the organization? Are we doing OKRs for the sake of doing it, or are we actually trying to drive for impact, drive for change? And that kind of ties back into the concept of work about work. Is OKRs to your team seen as work about work, or is it actually seen as an impactful tool? Because if it's seen as an impactful tool, that's going to want people to drive for innovation. That's going to set people to kind of set ambitious KRs. We don't want to, at the beginning of the year, when we have the objectives get released, we don't want to just create the KRs to be something that's super low bar and achievable within the first 2 months, right? Like, that's not going to do anyone any favors. The point of KRs is to help push the team, challenge the team, set proper expectations, and at the same time, be able to kind of set some stretch goals to say, here's where we potentially want to strive towards. Now, I'm going to use a quick example of something that's not necessarily business related, but maybe something all of us can potentially relate to, where I come from a background in kinesiology. So I grew up wanting to be a physical therapist. I did a lot of volunteering, went through all of that. And one of the goals that we would have created for our clients is basically, if someone were to lose, access to their limbs, what is the long-term goal? What's the OKR? To regain access of that limb, be able to move again. What are the small goals that you're going to set to achieve? If in 1 month it's going to be such a easy goal that you're not going to think too much about it, it's not really setting yourself up for success. You're not challenging yourself to kind of regain access to that limb again. But if you're going to set something also on the flip side, something too ambitious, something unrealistic, your team might also begin to give up because they go, well, I didn't hit my goal that I set to achieve. I was nowhere near it. So it kind of dampers it. So you have to set that nice bar of, it's challenging, but realistic. And I think that's what's going to get your team really going and develop a good culture around KRs. But that was my non-business related one, but hopefully people on the call can relate to that as well if we're not too used to using OKRs within our organization.
Yeah, I think it's super relevant, Brandon. Like, and I think we're surprised. I'm always surprised by, like, you set, some pretty stretchy goals for the team, and then they get like almost there, or they, and then you celebrate that because 80% enough was actually good enough, and then you're sort of like, okay, cool. Well, that sounds stretchy, and like, good. Sometimes I get there, and like, wow, I actually didn't know if you'd get there.
Yeah. I think in our previous organization, we actually said that 80% was a hit for us. Like, stretch it out. If you hit 80%, it's a job done. It's always got to be a stretch.
Yeah. It's not just about, I guess, like, what are the results, but it's what's the retrospective. What, if we take a look back on the year, are we proud to achieve what we have set to achieve? And what can we do to kind of readjust for next year? Because that's basically setting inspirations for your next KRs. And it's a constant building function. So something to kind of bring up, because earlier we talked about the concept of just like starting OKRs. That's kind of it. you have to start the program. Don't spend too much time. It's like the concept of building a bike shed. If you ask everyone in the room, how would you build a bike shed? You're going to have your own opinion on how to build it. We're going to spend hours upon just talking about building the perfect bike shed. In reality, we just need something that works. We need something to get started. We need data points. And that's kind of how OKRs, I believe, should kind of begin, where we just get started, get wins on the board, data points, and we adjust as we need to go. They don't need to be super rigid. We can kind of progress and change as we move forward.
Nice, mate. Nice. Lachlan, walk us through what the shift at Woolworths, walk us through what that actually looked like. How did you build the case for change, and who did you need to bring along the way to actually make that happen?
Yeah, I guess I was super lucky. I had my managing director really supporting this kind of case for change right from the start, and he asked me to look after the tool Asana when I sort of moved into this role. And to be fair, like, I think it's been around for sort of 6 or 7 years now, but the first little while it was very much a here's the tool that you must use and don't use anything else, and or else type thing, which I mean, people used it, but it wasn't to its fullest extent. Like, there was lots of like one-on-one folders and just chats unanswered and those sorts of things. And so I took a bit of a different approach where I just sort of didn't mandate anything, but I just kind of used it with a team that I was working within and said, this is like how we're going to, do business, and, this, and just try and, like, I think to Brandon's point, just get a few runs on the board and sort of prove a few use cases across different functions. And then what we saw was that it kind of worked for us. We were quite a small team. And then other people were like, oh, how are you doing that? Like, we were taking things like it was a 40-week project and trimming 4 weeks off because we sort of knew where everybody was up to. And, and so we were sort of just like sharing those quite organically. And we, as you do, obviously, in such a large organization, there's lots of different teams that, were starting to be interested. And then they'd have a few wins, and I was just like positively reinforcing that throughout all the, different cadences that, we had, or just, corridor conversations and the like. And it grew. And so, I think it was definitely helped by, like I said, with the quarterly delivery cycle and that kind of way of working that was brought in, a few years ago now. But yeah, we've grown from, I think we're, just over 1,000 or so, users now of the tool, which just like active users, and there's people that view the project as well. So I think it's just this positive reinforcing, and I think now Brandon and I were talking, I think we're almost at that point now where it's back to, okay, now this is how we work, because it's like it's been, and so it's kind of come full circle, which I think because we have that consistency now and people in there. So organic at the start, and then a bit more tally at the end.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine how powerful that being organic was when people, it's almost like the value just materializes organically and not kind of like mandated, and it speaks for itself. Like, I think that is certainly a recipe for success. Nice. So Lachlan, it sounds all good, but what was harder than what you expected? So what kind of, and what surprised you, I guess, also on the upside?
Yeah, I think change is just hard in general, and so it's just we sort of mentioned it a bit, but it's just like starting and then getting some advocates to kind of push it for you, with you as well. I think they're probably the main things.
Nice.
Yeah, I think what I would say is, I guess specifically for, not just because Brandon's in the room, but specifically for Asana, there was some stuff that it didn't kind of do a few years ago, and we were luckily had quite a few vocal team as well. I'm like, hey, this is kind of important to us, and the tool doesn't do this now, or like, hey, we really wanted to do this. And to the team's credit, they kind of put it on their backlog, and then had worked on it, and I'm sure other people were asking for it as well. But it was like, I think being able to go, all right, well, this didn't do this, and then now you've asked for it, and then a few quarters later or something, it's it's there. So hey, you better use it now because you asked for it. Like, that's kind of it definitely helped along the way too.
Nice, mate. Nice. So Brandon, in terms of obviously if you think about OKRs to outcomes and closing that visibility gap, what, from your perspective, what did you wish organizations knew before they started to actually try to solve for this? So what mistakes do you see, come up repeatedly when you change organizations about this problem?
Yeah, I think one of the first, this is going to be related to the point that I brought up earlier. There's a lot of planning, which makes sense because it's like typically who's making the objectives. They're going to be the people from the top. But then there's a bit of over engineering at times as well of they say we don't have time to do planning yet because we're just constantly in the do phase. And then two, when it does come to planning for them sometimes takes 3 months, 6 months. And then from my perspective, like if we just had a small plan from the beginning, like not necessarily something we fully like 100% commit to for we're not looking for a 5-year plan or a 3-year plan. Let's just build a quarterly plan so that we can kind of get some small wins on the board. So when it does come time for that larger company planning, we have some data points to say, maybe this is something we should be building towards. Because it's not just like, although if leadership takes a while to build objectives from the top, what does that mean for the individuals on the bottom? They're just going to be building out their own individual KRs, not really knowing where to tie their projects to. And then that just creates a bit more chaos, a bit more confusion within the organization. It just becomes a little bit directionless. So for me, I think one of the first misstep I sometimes see clients do is just they take a little bit too long around developing an objective for their organization to just kind of work towards, like just set a direction.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I mean, for me, what I'm hearing there is that we're saying that the journey doesn't really have to be perfect to be valuable, to get started, and we don't have to figure it all out before we start. We can, as long as we start somewhere and we make progress, whether that's imperfect or it's a little bit messy. Even I think I remember, Lachlan, we had a chat last week, working with one team or one work stream to just identify value first, really is what makes this thing work. So it's not about really the shift, isn't really a movement, it's more just about the direction that it takes us in.
Yeah. It's all an iterative process, right? Where we just need to kind of make development as we go. Like I think especially within more recent years as well, let's say an organization has developed a OKR for the year. However, with new technologies coming out, like especially with the release of AI, right? Like I'm sure everyone has reworked their entire roadmap because now that AI is on the board, we can't just work on what we've committed to working on for the rest of the year. We kind of need to pivot. We need to change. We need to be very agile with our planning and our process. So we need to kind of allow for a culture that says, yes, we can make changes if in the middle of the year, if we need to, if it makes sense within the market to do so.
Love that. Absolutely. So if we really get then into what good looks like. So Lachlan, when visibility as a whole is working, what does it actually look like day to day? So what's measurably different for you and for leadership?
Yeah, I think, like I mentioned at the top, there's so many, different stakeholders in. I'll speak about my business in Woolies, and people want different updates at different times, just because they're going into a conversation or whatever. And they're, hey, what's the latest on this? And I think for me, what good looks like is if, my line manager pings me, hey, what's the status on this? And I just send him like the link to the Asana project and like, to figure it out yourself. And then, but at least I know then, like, and I'll obviously check the project before I send it to make sure it's up to date. It's I think, and he actually he likes that. It's because it's forcing him to use the tools as well, right? So I think for me, it's the team are working in one place, and like stuff happens in sheets and docs and slides and Miro boards, and of course, and work can happen wherever. But as long as there's like the tasks are being tracked in a meaningful way that's up to date, or no more than a couple of weeks out of date, because and for me that's what good looks like, especially if things do get off track, and they call that as well. And so it's for me, it's the easiest thing in the world if we've gone, well, the objective is to do, get 5 innovative products through in this quarter, and then they've gone and asked for funding in the innovation fund for those 5 things, and one of them has been rejected or they have enough information there. It's so easy for me to then escalate that to wherever it needs to go, because, well, hang on, we said we'd do this, and then you've not been approved here. So, and then when the team see that you can help them so quickly because that's all flowed and they've done the right thing and it's unblocked it, then it's sort of just, I guess, that positive reinforcement. So for me, it's that when the system's working and people give me feedback and, it's honest as it needs to be.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I think I thought of another thing that was probably harder than what I realized. I know it's your previous question, but I think it's just the actual, when the team are planning, assigning somebody else the task, even if they've had the conversation with them and like, hey, I need you to do this task, because there's many projects where I sort of see like, I've just had project lead and then all the tasks are to them. I'm like, well, is that planning, or is that you just gave yourself a bunch of tasks? So yeah, I think that's what good looks like, and also another watch out.
Yeah, nice. I mean, from a visibility point as well, believe it or not, we had to kind of also bring kind of leadership at a stage onto this journey as well, and get them also talking engaged, because as you know, it also starts from the top. Kind of where you practice what you preach, and we landed up taking all the objectives and key results and actually make them visible in the leadership area. So when they come to work, the first thing they see is how they're going. That creates a conversation, and then people start realizing, hey, this matters. So yeah, it's all those little small things that can make a difference.
I think one of the best breakthroughs I had was, I don't know if you can see it but I put the little Asana app down on the bottom of the phone, and I did the same thing for my director. I'm like, hey, just give me your phone for a sec, and I downloaded it, I put it on there. I'm like, if you want to just click this first, and then we'll spend 5 minutes a day on it and just show some appreciation there. To your point, like start at the top, and she actually got a lot of benefit from that as well, by being up to speed in 5 minutes a day.
Nice. So, it's one thing seeing that visibility and seeing how we're going, but tracking is, to me, something that is equally, or I don't know, just as hard. Like, how are we actually tracking to those OKRs? So sometimes you can, kind of set out yourself a goal, but if you only track that goal at the end, it might be a little bit too late. So how do you guys handle and actually track that you're on progress or you're on track to reaching that final goal? So what signals are you watching along the way, rather than just going to the end and saying, okay, well, we've hit our goal now?
Okay. First, I think there's a few different ways, and it depends on your team. Like you can kind of see it, I guess, if like there's not been much activity in the project for a while, or if everything's just green for way too long, or the status updates are a bit more AI, then they haven't changed the Z's to S's for the Australians, in there. And so like, have you really read it, or you just pressed a button type thing? And it's sort of like a bit of a follow-up. But I think one thing that we implemented as well in my team is that there's, the status updates which come through, on a fortnightly basis, but we also, like every third Friday, do a bit of a team retro. And so it's about not exactly the projects, how they're going, but maybe the ways of working with it, and just 2 questions: what went well and what could have gone better in the last 3 weeks. And it's super interesting to kind of see things that happened in those last 3 weeks for one of the team might have happened for 2 others, but they just I obviously hear it, because I catch up with all of them individually, but it's like it's good for them to kind of share amongst themselves as well. I think so, like that kind of goes a long way to the tracking and the I guess open conversations about, well, this was hard, and then sort of just moving it through as well. So more talking than less. Yeah.
And I think that's a wonderful point as well, because like I guess the opposite of that would then be, rather than performing regular status updates, is silence. And silence creates assumptions. Silence creates a bit of worrying feelings from others, and especially when you identify who your audience is, who has eyes on these or on these goals, on these KRs? Like, do you want that audience to be nervous about what's happening because you're just not keeping things up to date? So kind of like creating that culture around regular status updates on how we're performing on our KRs, I think is going to be absolutely wonderful, because one, that allows you to control the narrative, and two, that just allows you to inform people on what's happening within your team, which then prevents the concept, I just keep saying the word work about work, but it kind of assists with that work about work, not for your team, but now for the other teams as well. They're not taking up a lot of mental headspace on what's happening in your org, because they can just easily see what's happening. Like, they can just see the update of things are on track or at risk or off track, and then just go, if it's on track, don't need to focus. If at risk or off track, I can at least read the update, see what the justification for why things are the way that they are. You would have hired smart people on your team as well, so you trust them with their decision and their grading criteria. And I think with these types of grading criteria as well, it's going to be all around not just the concept of did we pass these goals or not, but instead, what are the learnings? If things did go south, why did it go south? What are we doing to rectify things to kind of make it, go back to on track again? So it's all about the learnings, and you can only have learnings if there's transparency and if we're, not being kept in the dark.
Yeah, nice. Something else that I also saw teams adopt, which really helped to understand if they're actually going to hit that target or not, it's the whole concept of leading and lagging indicators. So they really only used to have lagging indicators to say, by this time I'm going to have hit that, but the reality was the time came, they didn't hit it. So they introduced leading indicators. So, an example of that would typically be if you wanted to, for example, let's say, if your outcome was to grow customer retention, then a lagging indicator in that case would obviously be that your retention rate needs to be something at the end of the quarter. But instead of just using that, you could actually introduce a leading indicator, which might be, for example, a product engagement score on a week-by-week basis. Because, you could assume that if people aren't engaging, before the quarter ends, that the retention ultimately will suffer. So, yeah, it's all those small little things that can really just help you, kind of drive the behavior so that you can obviously reach the outcome at the end of the day. Nice. Okay, so Brandon, when you see organizations that have genuinely cracked this thing, what are the common things they've done? Are there 2 or 3 that tend to show up consistently?
Yeah, I think what people kind of do successfully in that sense would just be that sense of transparency, kind of trusting the people that you hire to do the job, and being able to kind of say, okay, we have the objectives at the top. Everyone's going to cascade out their work on what they want to achieve, let's say for the quarter or for the year, and then allowing for them to actually create their own plan on how they're going to achieve or hit the KRs that ties into your overall objective. So not necessarily saying that everyone's going to set their own objectives per se, but instead just setting up what their individual plan is to kind of get the team to be successful. And because of this transparency, it's not locked away within an individual spreadsheet in your SharePoint, OneDrive, or Google Drive, etc. But because it's fairly transparent, there's going to be that sense of accountability for people to want to kind of succeed, kind of push each other forward, or even understanding why your teammate might be focusing on project A instead of project B because it ties into this larger plan. So just really embracing transparency and allowing for the workers to kind of be a bit more creative with their work, I found is going to be a more successful organization.
Nice. So obviously there's a question there that may be kind of similar to this, which is what are the most common things that people get wrong, or essentially flipping around, what's the one thing that looks like progress but actually isn't? So what should people stop doing or avoid? Many of you,
yeah. I think it definitely internally with your own teams. I think stop or avoid emails at all costs, especially on project work. It's the least transparent thing. It's not connected work, and so I think for me that I've sent these emails off or whatever. Yeah, definitely. That's not progress. And so if you can keep the work in there, so it is transparent, then that's better for me. that's probably like the one key thing. I hate emails, but externally, whatever is fine, but not internally.
Yeah.
I think I guess one would also be just being very one directional, just being very tops down with your approach on OKRs, where you just go, this is what I'm going to not just build out the objective, but I'm going to build out the KRs for all of my team members as well, which again doesn't really necessarily paint the full picture, because someone on the top or just within the managerial level, they have a very specific view on what needs to get done, but they don't actually see how things should be done. What's the realistic opportunity from the bottom? So again, it doesn't really stimulate that creativity. It just kind of creates workers to say, okay, if I hit this, I'm successful, and that's all I need to do. It doesn't really kind of promote people to go above and beyond. And second thing actually is, I'm just going to keep continuing on now, is around like treating losses as failure, where, I think that kind of then stunts growth, that stunts individuals from wanting to take risks, creating stretch goals, allowing for people to kind of like say, okay, maybe this is an area of opportunity that we need to explore that we haven't explored before because we were just such a risk adverse organization. So taking risks and maybe if it does lead to failure, it still teaches the organization. It teaches people, here's why it didn't work. Here are potentially steps that, maybe we miscalculated. But as long as we log the failures, keep it within the database, we can either always reference it back if a new similar idea pops up again, or if it's in the database, especially with today with how we're leveraging AI should be able, you can just feed with information. I have an idea. Here's my approach. What do you think what should happen? And AI will kind of be able to pull that information up and go, here's some potential missteps on something you should reconsider before, or something you should consider before continuing on with this idea. So it's just that constant self-improvement by taking these types of risks.
Awesome.
You've learned what not to do. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's also good when you can sort of, to your point, I think, Brandon, you set the objective, and then the best for me is like when I see the team kind of self-organize around the key results as well. It's like, oh, you take that bit, I'll take that bit, and they kind of like, they know what the goal is, and so they'll just figure it out themselves. Obviously, sometimes they need a little helpful push, but it's the best when they can do it themselves.
Yeah,
awesome. Okay, and just to kind of start writing off the questions, I see we're at quarter two here, but kind of the goal. So if someone is watching this today and wants to make progress on this in the next 30 days, what would you actually tell them to do? Kind of not a 6-month plan, just like the next 30 days. What does it look like to them?
Yeah, I would say get started. Don't spend too much time thinking about what the goals should look like. Again, we want, like, these goals are going to be iterative. We just need some things on the board, because if you're just getting started now, there's also probably going to be some convincing amongst the team members as well. So you don't want to overwork it and then lead yourself down to not necessarily failure, but just less buy-in, but instead get a small working group, set up an objective, set some KRs, get some quick wins on the board, and then kind of expand with that type of growth.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'd say the same. Just put time in to do it, and then do it, in the order in which your business, needs to plan. So whether it's, the leadership agrees on objectives, and then have the time in with the team to plan the key results, and then set up a couple of those cadences and just see what works. I mean, sometimes things start weekly and end up being monthly or whatever, and that's cool. But I think it's just, I'm always surprised at the team when they write stuff down, exactly how much they can, deliver in the time that we give them. So
awesome. Well, there you have it. So follow that, and you're guaranteed success, guys. You word it from the best. Awesome. We're gonna. I know we are at time now, so I'm just gonna take a look and see if we've got any questions that we can quickly answer before we wrap it up. So we've got one here from Steve Porter. How do you get buy-in from teams who see visibility tools as surveillance rather than support?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely come up in my, kind of 6-7 years looking after this tool as well. And there might be a bigger issue at hand there, because I think it's, hopefully that it's just all agreed goals. And so it's, Yeah, I mean, I think what helps with it is if the team do put things in the project that they need actual help on, and then whoever their leadership, whatever, can then go and help them and unblock it. And I think that's like the positive reinforcement. Yeah, I mean, other than that, I think the team can also have their own private projects and things too. Like not everything has to be, completely shared, is from what I've found as well. But I think maybe I'm just an oversharer, and so like everything, fine surveillance, whatever. But it definitely has come up before. I'm not downplaying it, but I think you need to work through.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a major concern always, right? But if you reframe that and you shift it from who's watching to actually who benefits, then teams themselves can see how their work connects to the bigger picture. That visibility starts feeling like really like a camera that actually is pointing at them, and that that status feeding really starts working in their favor, helping them with clearer priorities and having less ambiguity, etc. But definitely a major problem, or a concern at least, that I've seen with a lot of organizations.
Yeah, definitely. And I think typically why people will kind of see this as a concern as well as a surveillance tool, because it sometimes does feel like that. And especially if the culture you have within your organization does that kind of promote that type of behavior. So I think one thing that I found a bit that's helpful, and again, that ties into the point around don't have fear of failure, because failure are learning points. This might then tie into the concept of decoupling OKRs from direct performance reviews. I don't think OKRs should be a performance review metric within for the individuals. I think it's a tool. I think it'll help facilitate the conversation, but to then tie your goals to say, if you don't hit all your KRs, you're not going to do well in your performance review. That's going to kind of drive some cultural issues within the organization as well. So I would say use it as a tool, but don't use it as a driving force for the performance reviews. You want to kind of create a more open and transparent organization or culture, so that we can allow for people to kind of have that self-management of what your KR should look like, and having ambitious but realistic goals.
Nice, Brandon. Nice. Okay, so unfortunately, we'll need to draw the webinar to a close. So honestly, I'd like to take this opportunity to give a massive shout out to both you, Lachlan, and Brandon for joining us today and providing us with honestly such valuable insights, which hopefully a lot of us can actually now put into practice. So I was kind of typing away. Yeah, there was so much being said, so I didn't catch all the nuggets. But for me, some of the things that really stuck out to me was we were speaking about don't treat the losses as failures. Brandon, everything around just think about the culture of OKRs and how you actually create that, so important. And framing it for people of like, why is OKRs important to me? Start really small and just kind of make it tangible and make it real. You were speaking about the alignment, thinking that alignment is a habit and not just an event overall. Think about leading and lagging indicators and maybe incorporating that. And that essentially it's not about the tool, right? It's about that structure and having that alignment in place. So think about that and don't think it from a tooling point of view, because you will set up yourself to fail. Okay. So a reminder for everybody on the webinar today that a recording of today's session will be sent out to all the registrants. So feel free to share it with anyone really within your team and your organization. We'd find it like really, who actually might find it really useful. And if anything from today's conversation sparked a question, or you'd like to dig into how that applies within your own organization, feel free to reach out to us here at Elegance Group. And then finally, probably the most exciting bit is if you actually want to see how this actually works inside Asana, Brandon over here is hosting a separate live demo session, which is covering Asana's goal management and OKR features in action. So we're actually going to see how this actually looks, in play. So if you're interested in that, keep an eye out for on the details, or let us know, and we'll also make sure that you get the information. Okay. So once again, thanks everybody. We really appreciate your time, and thanks to our panel today.
Thanks, Clayton. Thanks, Brandon.
Bye.